Hello, class. I hope that you enjoyed yesterday's assignment looking into the Brown versus Board of Education. Brown versus Board of Education was a case that really did give hope to the African Americans for equality, spurred on the civil rights movement as people did believe that there was opportunities for equality amongst the races. However, that hope is going to be short-lived as we see school systems across the country slowly or not at all work towards desegregation of schools, even with a court case. Little Rock, Arkansas was one of these school systems that was slow in trying to desegregate the schools. We are going to be looking at the crisis that took place there. This is a national, or sorry, this crisis got national attention and became kind of the spurring point of Americans as they witnessed the cruelty that took place to youth, African American youth at this time. So, who were the Little Rock Nine? They were 9 students that were recruited by the Arkansas NAACP to begin the desegregation process in Little Rock. Daisy Bates, who was the leader of the NAACP, organized the desegregation of Central High School. Her and members of the NAACP had worked with the school board and came up with a plan that would slowly desegregate Little Rock schools. In 1957 was when the board and the NAACP had agreed to start the process by allowing a few African American students to enter into the Central High School. So Daisy Bates, along with other members of the NAACP, sent out um, letters and recruitments to African American students throughout the city to try to get students who would be willing to go into Central High School and desegregate the public school system. She was able to recruit quite a few students, but as they went through the process of vetting to make sure that the students were able to be to withstand the pressures and the resistance that they would face, they ended up coming down to 9 students that they felt was able to handle those pressures that was going to happen in an all-white school. She also is the one who helped organize the first day schedule for the students to get into the school. You will be watching a video dealing with um, Eckford, who went by herself, as well as that first day experience for the African Americans. This just kind of shows you who the 9 were. So you have Thelma Mothershed, Elizabeth Eckford, Gloria Ray, Jefferson Thomas, Melba Patillo, Ernest Green, Kalata Walls, Minnie Jean Brown, Terrence Roberts, and Daisy L. Bates, who was the leader. She was not a student. They ranged from 14 to 16 at the time. Minnie Jean was the 14-year-old student. So Little Rock Nine crisis started in 1947. Like I said, this was a push by the NAACP to speed up desegregation of public schools. They did choose Central High School in Little Rock, Arkansas to do it. Governor Faubus declared a state of emergency and had the National Guard troops stationed in front of the schools to prevent the African American students from entering. He was not going to allow desegregation of schools. Faubus was extremely outspoken in his stance on desegregation. He believed that the Supreme Court did not have the right to declare or to create laws that dictated what the state had to do when it came to African American population. Um, Basically, he stated that violence and bloodshed might break out if black students were allowed to enter the school, which just really kind of shows you his mentality and his ideology towards African Americans. Unfortunately, he was not the only one who felt this way, as we will look and as you will see um, the population and the turnout, the mob turnout that followed suit with this. On the first day of school, which was September 4th, 1957, the students ended up not showing up except Eckford, who ended up showing up by herself. She was turned away by the National Guard. The outcome of the first day of school was that President Eisenhower, as well as Jefferson Davis, who was a judge in Little Rock, Arkansas, both stepped in and ordered Faubus that he needed to remove the National Guard and allow the African American students to come into the school. On September 20th, the National Guard was removed and the Little Rock Police Department became responsible for maintaining order. The problem was is that the mob outside of the school was still quite large, and the police department was not able to maintain the order necessary to create a safe environment for the 9 African American students to enter into the school. However, on September 23rd, they decide that they are going to enter. And so under escort, the 9 students make it through the mob and into the school for their first day. While they were in school, they were hearing and witnessing riots that were taking place outside. As a result of the riots and the mobs that were taking place, President Eisenhower sent in over 1,000 members of the 101st Airborne Division and put them in charge of the National Guard to keep order. With that, what we do see is that the riots did subside. There was still quite a few protesting that took place after the fact. And so even throughout the whole school year, the students were not going to be able to enjoy peace at the school. However bad outside of the school was, inside the school was not any better for the 9 African American students. They faced harassment, they faced physical violence, things from being beaten, having acid thrown in their face, thrown down the stairs, kicked, beaten, multiple ways that they were dealt with. Also, they were banned from participating in activities. We have African American students who came from their schools and had participated in various sports who were no longer able to do so. One of the students was a senior who had played sports at his previous school and had to give that up in his senior year in order to participate in the Central High School. Also, the African American students had to witness burnings of African American figures in an empty lot across the street in a protest of the African Americans entering into the school. The students were not the only ones who faced harassment for attending Central High. One of the mothers of the students was fired from her job because she refused to take out her child from Central High School. Eventually, what happens to the 9? Governor Faubus was not going to give up on preventing integration in the schools. And so what he ends up doing is they or they keep an injunction and they delay integration. Basically, what ends up happening is Faubus closes down the Little Rock schools until they can prevent integration from happening. Eventually, it is turned down by the Supreme Court in 1958. However, Governor Faubus is going to ignore the ruling. Like I said, shuts down the public schools. The white students attend the private schools. The African Americans either have to go back to the African American schools outside of the city, or they have to attend classes in other ways. The Little Rock 9, even though it may not seem to be extremely successful, was. Eventually, it did lead to the integration of Arkansas public schools. It was the high point of the desegregation in the Little Rock school districts, came in 1980, when we actually see that an average black student attended a school that was 50% white. So that is pretty good when we look at integrations. Most schools today don't even have that much integration in it. The Little Rock 9 also inspired for future civil rights movements and actions like freedom rides and the sit-ins, marches, protests, all the way even up to the March on Washington. It's important to recognize the courage that the 9 students had when entering into a school of thousands of whites who did not want them there. Because of that courage, it led other African Americans to step up and fight for their equality as well. When we get into the 1960s, things that African Americans had learned from what they saw during the Little Rock Nine crisis is going to lead them into their own movements, fighting for equality with the dignity and grace in which they did.